I've been a financial advisor for over 20 years now, and I'm super fortunate because I get to work with hundreds of families, and the vast majority of these families have $1 million, $3 million, $5 million, $10 million or more. And so recently I did a video and I shared with everybody, you know, this is what life looks like for a retired couple that has $5 million. And that video did well. So I did a follow-up and said, you know, this is what retirement looks like for a couple with $3 million, and that video did well. So in today's video, I want to talk about an important concept, which is how do you know how much money is enough in order to retire? And there's probably a fair number of you watching that says, you know, Azul, I'm never going to hit that $3 million mark. I'm never going to hit that $5 million mark. But you know what? If you've got $500,000, if you somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million, you are in the running, if you wanted to retire with $3 million to $5 million. It just depends on how many years you want to keep working, right? It takes a long, long time to build up that first $1 million, right? Think about your first $100,000. If you're just squirreling away, let's say a little under $1,000 a month, $10,000 a year, and that grows at 7% a year, well, that's going to take you about 8 years to reach your first $100,000. But guess how long it takes you if you have $900,000 already and you're still saving that $10,000 a year. Guess how long it's going to take you to get that 10th $100,000, that $900,000 to $1 million. It's going to take you less than 2 years. It's going to take you about 15 or 16 months, assuming that 7% return. So if you're $500,000 to $1 million, a lot of you are in the running if you wanted to. I don't think you should do this, but you're in the running to have $3 million, $5 million. Now, if you just want to optimize on dollars, the strategy is to work until the day you die. Then you never need to touch your savings. And it can continue to grow. You can put money in, but you don't want to do that. So that's an extreme. But what I want to talk about today is how do you know what the right amount of money is? So here's my trademark, right? Let's go for a walk and talk about this. So, okay, so what's the right amount? Let me show you this beautiful view I have behind me here. I'm super fortunate today. I'm staying in a nice place. I just wanted to share that with you. But let's go for a little bit of a walk where you can get this view behind me. So what is the right amount of money to retire with? And you know, I can't tell you that. That's a decision we all need to make ourselves. And you know that. You don't need me telling you that. But let me talk to you about what those trade-offs are. You know, the trade-off, if you have $500,000, let's just start there. Let's say you've got $500,000 and you're 50 to 60 years old. You know, what does retiring with $500,000 look like? Well, the first thing it looks like is it looks like freedom, right? It looks like a chance to live your life. You have some really healthy, strong, active years that you can take advantage of right now, right? At 50 years old, you likely have all of your health, you have a lot of energy, you have a lot of vitality. You know, how do you put a price tag on that versus waiting until you're 60 or 65 and maybe having $1 million or $1.5 million? Well, let's just talk about what it looks like. At $500,000, you're probably watching your budget pretty carefully, right? At just assuming the 4% rule, which is called the sustainable withdrawal rate. This isn't financial advice for you, but you can look that up, sustainable withdrawal rate. Let's just say you could take out 4% a year and you can inflate that every year for inflation, right? That's $20,000. That's not a whole heck of a lot of money. And what are you going to do about healthcare? Now, if you're a retired military person, if you're a retired police officer, and you have your healthcare taken care of, you have a pension, and on top of that, you've got $500,000. That can make a big difference. Let's say your pension is $30,000 a year. You have healthcare covered. I don't know. It depends on your situation with the military and with your police force or the fire department that you might have worked for. But if you have your healthcare covered and you've got a pension and on top of that, you have $500,000, you know, you probably have a really nice lifestyle there. And there are folks that retire here in the United States and are able to make that work. There's people that retire overseas. They say, you know, it would be a little tight in the United States. So I'm going to live in Mexico, or I'm going to live in Southeast Asia. You know, a lot of Americans see that and they put an asterisk next to it and say, well, you really can't afford to retire. You know, I'm calling bunk on that. I have been to Southeast Asia. I have lived for almost 12 months in Mexico City, in Mexico and Latin America during the pandemic. My oldest daughter lives in Mexico City. So I have been there, and that lifestyle can be quite nice. There's some great beach communities. Mexico City is kind of like in the U.S. If you combined New York City and Washington, D.C., in many ways, that reminds me of Mexico City. And there are some really, really nice parts of Mexico City. So I would not put an asterisk there. But getting back to the point, you know, what does retirement look like with $500,000? You're probably watching your budget pretty closely. So what does your life look like with $1 million, right? Let's use that same 4% rule. With 4%, now you've got $40,000 a year that you can spend. Again, what are you going to do with healthcare? Because healthcare can be pretty costly here in the United States. So, you know, that is an issue. And then do you have a mortgage? You know, if you have a pension and you don't have a mortgage, you can retire with you know, very little and still be okay as long as you've got your healthcare covered. This is not financial advice, but this is just high-level observations from somebody that's been a financial advisor for over 20 years. So $1 million, I think you're still living on a budget. Now, as you approach $3 million, what does that look like? And in that video, I used the phrase that, you know, you're probably the richest average person in your neighborhood, in your friend group, if you have $3 million. So, you know, you're not having to budget that tightly. You have some leeway. And you know, you're probably living in the same home that you were living in when you had $500,000. But you have some leeway. If you did want to change where you live, let's say you've lived in the Midwest your whole life and you wanted to, you know, live in the West Coast or the Southeast, Florida, or the Northeast, you have the opportunity to do that, as you do if you're making $500,000 and you're a little bit older and you're collecting Social Security. So $3 million gives you more of a buffer. Now, what about $5 million? You know, there's an HBO show called Succession, where there's this very, very rich family. They're, you know, media moguls. They own cable news networks and things like that. And apparently one of the grandkids upset grandpa and grandpa cut him out of the will, and grandpa only left him $5 million. And in the show, one of the kids tells the kid that was cut out of the will and was only left $5 million. He says, and I'm paraphrasing here, but you know, he says, 5 million's the worst. You know, you're not rich enough to fly corporate, and you're not rich enough that you don't have to work anymore. You know, so it's the worst. You're the poorest rich man in the room. And I like that phrase, you're the poorest rich man in the room. You know, I'll take that. But I think there's a lot of truth to it. At $3 million, you're the richest average person in the room. And at $5 million, you're the poorest rich person in the room. You might be traveling first class occasionally, but you're probably not chartering a corporate jet. So, you know, what is the right amount of money? How do you decide what's the right amount of money? You have to look, I think, you have to look at what the trade-off is, right? If you're, let's say you're at $1 million and you'd like to get to 3 million, you know, if you're in your 50s, if you're in your early 60s, that's something that you likely can do, but it's going to take years of your life, and they're going to be, the years you're going to sacrifice are your healthiest and most active years. So you might hit that financial goal, but you might find yourself without the health, without the mental acuity, without the energy, without the vitality in order to enjoy that money. So this isn't financial advice for you, but this gives you an idea. And the way you decide what's the right amount is think about what you're gaining. You know, why do you want to have that extra amount of money? And then what are you sacrificing in order to get there. And I think if you look at it that way, you're much more likely to make the right decision for yourself. And speaking of which, I'm going to close here with this beautiful view behind me, but I'm also going to close with encouraging you to think about retiring as soon as you can. This video here is 5 reasons to retire as soon as you can. Yes, if you wanted to optimize on your bank account, you work until the day you die. You just keep working and piling money away. But I don't think any of us want to do that. So let this video talk to your heart. And here's 5 reasons to retire as soon as you can, as opposed to building that net worth more and more and more. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in that video over here. Take care. Bye-bye.